do that. Okay. We're recording now. This is our first, and I'll remind everybody, when someone else is talking, you might want to mute yours, depending on whether it starts to loop back through. Sometimes you'll get some feedback. So if it starts to feel like it's looping and making weird noises, that could be why. Pima Chadron is a Buddhist nun. I'm not sure that a woman can be considered a Buddhist priest. Don't know that I get that, but in whatever case, that is what she's called, is a Buddhist nun. She is the author of over 20 books and has taught around the world about love and compassion. She sort of reminds me of a Thich Nhat Hanh kind of character. If you've ever experienced Thich Nhat Hanh, he's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk who is also just a wonderful soul. He is still with us. He's actually still alive, but his body has endured some terrible bout with cancer over the last few years. He happens to still be in the world with us, but both of them really kind of teach from the same place. At least it feels that way to me. I have a tendency when I come in contact with teachers that are very meaningful to me to feel it. There's a particular vibe and a frequency. And I kind of get that sort of, it's almost like, if you listen to 90s rock and you hear a 90s rock station, they all sound real similar. Well, that's kind of what I feel with like Pima and with Teak. But this book was my first introduction to Pima. And then after that, of course, I had to go looking for her everywhere. I was like, why have I not heard of her? And to me, I kind of summate this book from its very, like, I've read it a couple of times, and I suggest actually doing that, even with us doing this discussion, read it more than once, because there's a lot of really good stuff in here. And there's some stuff in here that you're just kind of like, what? I can't do that. And you may not be at the stage in your journey to be able to do some of these things. But even the title itself got me initially, Welcoming the Unwelcome. And I thought, who the hell wants to do that? What does that even mean, to welcome the unwelcome? Now, I immediately went philosophical with it. Well, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to welcome those folks who are unwelcome. That's really not the book is entirely about. It's about being open. It's about experiencing acceptance, I think. And I wrote just a quick line after reading this book the first time. I wrote it right in the front of my book there. And I just said, this book to me ultimately is about deep compassion and a simple reverence for all of life. That's kind of how I would sort of summate this book and what it did to me. So I thought we'd go ahead and get into chapter 1. I want to read a few things that I don't want to monopolize this at all. I just want to read a few things that stuck out to me in chapter 1, and then let's kind of discuss some of those things. And Obi, you've read this before. Patricia, I think you have a copy of this. You guys chime in to maybe something you've made notes on or something that was meaningful to you, and then anyone else obviously involved with the discussion. The opening part, the title of the chapter is Begin with a Broken Heart. Now, from a new thought standpoint, and if you come from a real sort of positivity standpoint, you kind of look at that and you say, what? I mean, isn't that kind of what we're running from? Like, why would we want to begin with a broken heart? But if you've ever experienced a broken heart, then you know what a broken heart will do to you. It will change your perspective on a lot of things. But the opening, just before the chapter starts, it says, our aim is to fully awaken our heart and mind, not just our own greater well-being, but also to bring benefit, solace, and wisdom to other living beings. What motivation could top that? What motivation could top that? Now, she opens up with saying, what is my purpose for reading this new book with its ominous title, Welcoming the Unwelcome? Are you reading it because times are uncertain and you want some clues about what will help you to make it through whatever's coming? Are you reading it to gain wisdom about yourself? Do you hope it will help you to get over certain emotional or mental patterns that undermine your well-being? Or did someone give it to you with lots of enthusiasm, and now you don't want to upset them by not reading it? Or were you invited to a book study with One Love Spirit Center? Right. So your motivation may include, she said, it may include some of all of the above. They're all good reasons, even the last one, for reading this or any book. But in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, to which I belong, when studying spiritual teachings, we set out by arousing an even greater motivation. In other words, from their tradition, they come at pretty much everything with this motivation. It's known as bodhicitta. In Sanskrit, bodhi means awake. Chitta means heart or mind. Our aim is to fully awaken our hearts and minds, not just for our own greater well-being, but also to bring benefit and solace and wisdom to other living beings. What motivation could top that? So I'll let you know that she's saying this book is really about awakening within our own selves, our own heart and our own mind, and expanding, awakening to a deeper sense, to fully awaken our hearts and minds to the greater well-being and to bring benefit and wisdom to all living beings. So I'll go down to, and I'll skip a paragraph here because I don't want to read the whole chapter to you. The next thing I underlined was bodhicitta, the awakened heart, begins with the wish to be free from whatever gets in the way of our helping others. I love that. Bodhicitta, the awakened heart, begins with the wish to be free from whatever is getting in the way of helping others. When I think in terms of helping somebody else, for me personally, you know, sometimes I'll start categorizing people or start categorizing situations. I know that you probably don't, but I do. And I look at those situations and I realize there's some judgment there. And so for me, when I'm thinking about awakening my heart and mind, I want to further expand and free myself from whatever keeps me from helping other people, whether it's a judgment, whatever political party they come from, whether they're overtly religious. I've said this to a lot of people before. I'm actually, radical inclusion for me doesn't start stretching until I start dealing with like fundamentalist Christians, honestly. That's where I have my biggest issue. I mean, I'm telling the truth about it. I'm being very transparent with you. That my issue is not gay people. My issue is not people who go to the bars on the weekends and drink. It's not people who are unmarried, living together, and all these things I was taught were so terrible when I was growing up. I run into there's a part of me that's resistant to overtly religious people, fundamentalists. And I'm asking myself during this time, I'm just letting you guys know, as I'm being very transparent and honest with you, I'm asking myself to expand when it comes to that. What is it that I need to free myself from? What kind of resistance do I have that I need to free myself from so that both bodhicitta is moving throughout me freely to everyone? So this is going to be a challenge. Welcome the unwelcomed. All right, so a few more things I underlined. We commit to doing all it takes to free ourselves completely from all our varieties of confusion and unconscious habit and suffering, because these prevent us from being fully there for others. In the language of Buddhism, our ultimate commitment to it is to attain enlightenment. How many have heard that word before, enlightenment? We hear a lot of it now. It's actually becoming really popular. I've noticed that there's sort of like back in the early 1900s, you had Paramahansa Yogananda. You had moving into further into the 1900s, you had Jiddu Krishnamurti, you had Alan Watts, you had oh gosh, what's the other guy's name? It's slipping my mind at the moment. That the Beatles went and saw him all the time. Ramdas, Ramana Maharshi. There was a sort of a surgence in the Western world of Eastern thought. And it kind of culminated, it seemed, with the 60s, the hippie movement. it sort of culminated in that. And it also grew a little bit after that, but then it was kind of like squashed. It was like sort of like the late 70s and early 80s led into a surge of what was called the moral majority. Like there was a big Jesus movement, but during the hippie movement, but it kind of gave way to some real strange ideas and started moving toward a very strict, very religious environment. So I know we know what the word enlightenment, we think we know what the word enlightenment means. I used to think that that was my ultimate search, was to search for enlightenment, right? And then I came to realize that the more you search for it, the more you push it away. The more you try to go after enlightenment, the more you seem to push it away. It really comes with a sense of acceptance. And as I accept, the more I accept, the more I embrace, the more I welcome, even the unwelcome, the more enlightenment just kind of happens. Like, for instance, spring, you know, we've just come through the spring. The fruit shows up after the bud and the flower vanquishes of its own self. So that's, to me, what enlightenment does. It's the growing, it's the seed on the inside of us. It grows into a bud, into a flower, and then it disappears as the fruit arrives. We don't have to force that. It becomes a natural course. And that's kind of the way I see enlightenment. But it says, in the language of Buddhism, our ultimate commitment is to attain enlightenment. In essence, this means knowing fully we are who we really are. So that's what she kind of defines enlightenment as, knowing fully who we really are. When we are enlightened, we will be fully awake to our deepest nature, which is fundamentally open-hearted, open-minded, and available for others. We will know this to be true beyond any doubt, beyond any going back. In this state, we will possess the greatest possible wisdom and skill with which we can benefit others and help them to awaken completely themselves. All right, so I wanted to, real quick, because I really don't want to take a whole lot of this time, but she talks about begin with a broken heart. And but I wanted to slow down there and maybe see if there's a hand that goes up or somebody who wants to speak to something that you've already heard so far that's of interest to you. Again, because I just don't want to monopolize the conversation. Anybody got your hand up? I can't really tell if there's hands up either. OB, did you have something I didn't know?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the idea of the broken heart, that is really the essence of all spiritual awakening, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Someone once said that we only see best when we're lying flat on our back. And also, someone once said that we see best through eyes that have been flushed with tears. And so it's in the brokenness or the poverty of one's spirit that we begin to see clearly what is ahead of us. I know that's true for me. If it wasn't for the brokenness and the despair and the despondency of life, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so we use this as a catalyst to move forward and to experience greater spaces and places of this ultimate reality, you know, what life is truly all about. So I truly believe that spiritual maturation begins with a broken spirit. I mean, it's true of my life.
Yeah, because I even think part of that is, you know, waking up one day and going, oh man, wow, I'm not even living life as I truly am. Like I woke up one day and realized that I was just modeling what I had been told I was.
Sure.
And what a breaking heart moment. Like I was like, I don't know anything. I was like, holy crap, nothing's real. And when you have that moment, that's a broken heart moment too. Because I remember sitting in the middle of my bed in my apartment on Lake Sinclair, Georgia, and saying, I don't believe any of this shit. Those were my words. I don't believe any of this shit. That's what I said in that moment. And I remember I was like, I hope God doesn't strike me, because I'd always been taught that that's what God will do if you say those kinds of things. But I really had one of those oh crap moments, and that broke me so deeply. It affected my physical nature. Like, people could tell something was not right. Luckily for me, at the time, I was going through a divorce, so I could just say, well, my heart is broken. But my heart was broken because I didn't believe in anything. It wasn't even about the marriage falling apart. My marriage to my belief system mattered to me more than any other marriage. And that is when that was the biggest divorce I was going through. Broken heart.
Even Jesus, if you understand Jesus from an Easter perspective, setting aside the binary westernized interpretation of Jesus, but in one of his greatest teachings in the Sermon on the Mount, he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they will be comforted." So it's talking about this bankrupt of spirit, this letting go or relinquishing from these attachments and coming to this place and space of emptiness. It's in our emptiness that we see. It's looking beyond the eye, the physical eye, and it's hearing beyond the physical ears to that which is eternal and that which that draws all people to itself, herself, or himself. So it all begins in emptiness. It all begins with as she says, a broken heart.
Yeah,
it all begins there.
I agree. We talk a lot about emptiness, which I know that you've been involved with some of the conversations over the last few years, but I talk a lot about emptiness because I do believe, there's the old proverb that says the usefulness of a vessel lies only in its empty space. Can't use it without it being empty. The water bottle must be empty in order to fill it up. And so the same is true with that brokenheartedness. Now, she shares a story, and I'll read this real quick. And this actually, she is a student of Trungpa Rinpoche, and yes. I don't say it as well as she does, but Trungpa Rinpoche shared this story when he was asked about practicing and cultivating a broken heart. This is on page 6 when if you start to look at it, but it's a story that he shared that basically brought him into a place of seeing suffering and not turning away from it. So many times we turn away from suffering. Jesus, there's a story in the Gospels about that too, where the man that was robbed and beaten and left to die on the street, and many people turned away. But what he was called the Good Samaritan did not turn away. And so Rinpoche talks about not turning away from suffering, but he tells a story when he was a little boy. He said he was on a rooftop of a monastery and saw a group of young boys stoning a little puppy to death. And though they were quite far away, he could see the terrified eyes of the dog and hear the boys' laughter. They were doing it just for fun. Rinpoche wished he could do something to save the puppy, but he was helpless. For the rest of his life, all he had to do was recall that time, and a strong desire to alleviate suffering would arise in his heart. The memory of the dog gave him his desire to wake up a sense of urgency. This is what propelled him day after day to make the best use of his life. Most of us, one way or another, try to do good in the world. This is a natural result of our having basic goodness. But our positive motivations are often mixed with other factors. For example, some people try to be helpful because they feel bad about themselves. They hope to look good in the eyes of the world. Through their efforts, they hope to improve their standing with others, which may then raise their feeling of self-worth. Based on my long experience, and this is Pima speaking here, based on my long experience of living in communities, I can say that these people often accomplish an astonishing amount. You hear others saying, Maria is worth 6 people, or I wish everyone was like Jordan. In most ways, they are the ones you want to have on your team. But at the same time, they don't seem to get any closer to waking up. We all probably know someone who says things like, I give and I give and I give and I never get thanked. This kind of frustration is a sign that the underlying issues aren't being worked out. In other words, she's talking about they're giving, but they're giving from a the motivation is not a motivation of compassion, really. Some people work hard day and night in the field of helping others, but their strongest motivation is to stay busy so they can avoid feeling their own pain. Wow. Some are driven by an idea of being, quote unquote, good instilled in them by their family or their culture. Some are motivated by feelings of obligation or guilt. Some do good to keep themselves out of trouble. Some are driven by the prospect of rewards in this life or maybe in a future existence. That sounds familiar if you come out of the Christian faith. Do good, get to heaven, you'll have jewels in your crown, and you can wear that really awesome crown in that Victorian village mansion that God's going to give you. Some are even motivated by resentment, anger, or a need to control others. If we take a good look within, we will probably discover that motivations like these are mixed with our genuine desire to help others. We shouldn't beat ourselves up about this because all these motivations come from our natural human tendency to look for happiness and to protect ourselves from pain. But they do not keep us from becoming more connected with our own hearts and with the hearts of other people. This makes it difficult for us to benefit others in any kind of a deep way. Wow. So the motivation is, bodhicitta, is to fully awaken the heart and the mind. And that little story about that puppy that Rinpoche shared. And I wish I could have done something about that. And every time he shared the story or needed to think about why am I relieving the suffering of others? That was motivation enough. And that's what opened up his heart. It broke his heart, which opened it up. I mean, truly about broken hearts. I mean, we run away from broken hearts, but I've never eaten a scrambled egg without breaking the shell. And there's some kind of the shell that needs to be broken at times. There's something sometimes that needs to break so that that truth is coming out of us. Anybody had anything you wanted to share or something you heard in that?
Well, you've probably heard it before from me. I'm sure you have. It was the death of my daughter. And my heart was broken so badly. I was thinking about taking my own life at the time, just to relieve myself of the mental agony I was going through. And I felt like lost, completely lost. And all I could do was ask, it came to me to say, ask Divine Spirit, God, and hey, all I want to get through is give me peace to get through this and nothing more than peace the rest of my life, nothing more. And I thought to myself, this is all mental conversation. I don't want anything more in life but peace. And if I should lose everything I have, just like Job in this, New Testament, that would mean nothing. I'd still have my peace. And within a few seconds, the agony gave way, and I wasn't overjoyed, but the agony was relieved. So that's what happened to me.
And ever since then, you've been in service of others.
Well, I've been generous all my life. I had some empathy, feeling for others, and compassion, and I had a general sense of the needy. I'd give to the needy when the occasion arose. I didn't go out and seek it, but just accidentally ran into it. I would give, but I never had a loving feeling, loving, caring empathy, shall I say, for despots of the world, Hitler and all the rest of them that killed millions. Until I got that peace, then I had a feeling of at least wondering why and having a feeling sorry for them the way they turned out to be. So never had that feeling before in my life. It was just me and my family, and that's it. Get up, go to work. That's it.
I think brokenheartedness gives us, I think it gives us the opportunity to recognize our connection with everyone, because the reality is that everyone has had something break their heart at some point or another. I think it reminds us of how human we are and how okay it is to be human, and how to make that, that connectedness gives you the ability to, well, you mentioned Hitler, and so people automatically think about someone in their mind that in your mind you think in terms of being detestable. And when you think about that, I like what you said. You then felt this sense of looking past the actor,
Right.
to the person. And I think that is the essence of bodhicitta. I really do. To be able to look past the actor and the action, and what is it that's motivating someone to act in this way, and have compassion for that one that we know we're connected to. I mean, it's Ram Dass said it like this. He said, when you become enlightenment, you are enlightened when you begin to see everyone as your lover.
Yes.
And essentially that was,
That's
to me,
friend.
when I heard him say, when you see everyone as your lover, a lot of people thought the same thing. What do you mean? What? It's not supposed to go around wanting to have sex with everybody. See, he said, no, that's not what I'm saying. He said, I want you to look a little deeper. And during a sharing one day, he was asked that question, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, when you have someone who you're in love with, you look past a lot of the flaws. You don't even see the flaws, in fact, because you love them so much. And you also, if you're trying to get commitment from them and you're in love with them, you have a tendency to bring out the best portion of you and relay that to them. And it became more understandable at that point. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. A deeper sense, getting past what we think of as judgments and flaws, and being able to see everyone as our lover.
The path of a bodhisattva in Mahayana Buddhism is all about coming back to this planet of consciousness, this space of human reality over and over again in order to eradicate human suffering. So a bodhisattva makes the determination that he or she is not going to go to the ultimate dimension, which is what the Mahayana Buddhists call heaven, the ultimate reality. They choose not to go there until every single being has experienced liberation. And that's a committed practice. And some people will even say that Jesus, in those so-called silent years, took on that bodhisattva vow, that his mission was to bring liberation, to bring freedom, to set the captives free, as Luke 4 talks about. But that begins, I believe, with a heart that is deeply entrenched in compassion, right? And compassion, I believe, can be defined this way. Compassion is loving and honoring other people, even with the foreknowledge that they may hurt you in the future, but you love them anyway.
No.
It doesn't matter. They cuss, they fuss, they abuse, they deceive. They don't have their actions or reactions doesn't have enough power to determine whether you love them or not. That's all about you. You make that decision. And if we could ever tap into that eternal love that is all inclusive, then we then step into that bodhisattva vow, and we can bring liberation to the whole world. It's a beautiful practice. It's a difficult practice. It's a spiritual discipline. But man, if we can just step into it, we can create a utopian world, I believe.
Yeah. And for everyone who says, I don't think that can happen, if you can't believe it will happen, then you most assuredly won't try to. But those of us who do believe it will happen are going to try.
That's right. That's right. Yes, sir.
And no, it's not easy. It can be hard as hell to do that. But I agree with that. Obi, man, that was good stuff right there. All right, all right. Anybody else have anything they wanted to share? Shannon, you just hanging out over there, and Rachel and Patricia, how y'all doing?
I'm just taking it all in, and I'm sitting here thinking, well, I work in customer service, so having compassion is a daily struggle.
Oh, come on now.
I used to have this saying, Shannon. I used to have this saying: the only problem with customer service is customers.
This is so true.
What I would used to say is, when I was in full-time ministry, I love preaching every Sunday, but I just couldn't stand the people.
Bishop Carlton says this all the time. He says,
I love
preachers love crowds, but they hate people. Yeah. He said, you'd be surprised at how many of them do, honestly, seriously, and behind the scenes talk about folks. Because they used to, Mike Warnke is somebody that I've known for a long time, and he used to have a saying. He would say, listen, shepherds are so mean because sheep bite. He said, and they bite. He said, because the people were called sheep. That's what he said. They were called sheep. And he said, and the sheep bite hard, fast, and continuously. But the truth is that's the problem. That becomes a problem with the mechanism of that whole sheep and shepherd thing, and you lose the ability to connect, and that you don't have bodhicitta in that situation, because the moment the heart starts to close is the moment that the love gets withdrawn from the situation. The moment the love gets withdrawn, then you have a deficiency of life itself, because love is life. And so this is one of the reasons that I fell in love with Ram Dass so much, because I really believe he was a walking bodhisattva, and I think he was definitely a walking piece of heaven. Wasn't there an old song about that or something? But I really do, and miss him a lot, but continue to be able to hear from him. Going in further here just a little bit. In contrast, the motivation of bodhicitta leads to more profound. This is page 8. Bodhicitta leads to more profound and long-lasting results because it's based on understanding where suffering comes from. We've just been talking around that. Jim brought that up. Anybody that could do what Hitler did, there was such a deep sense of suffering there that apparently nobody in his inner circle could even get to. He was unwilling to even face it. And we can only hope. And I certainly believe that on the other side, he was able to at least look at some of that. Then maybe he makes another trip around. We don't know. At the outer level, there are the immense sufferings that we see and hear about and may experience from time to time. The cruelty, hunger, fear, abuse, and violence that plague people and animals and the planet itself. Every one of these comes from emotions such as greed and aggression, which in turn come from not understanding the basic goodness of our true nature. I invite us all to every day at some point look our own self in the mirror and say, don't forget your basic goodness. It is your true nature. It is your true nature. This is where the lie of religion begins to break us away from being enlightened, with saying that at your core, you are a sinner, that you're no good, and that you're worthless, and that you need an external savior in order for you to get to somewhere else. Be mindful when you hear theology or doctrine that is built around guilt and shame and separation, because the moment you begin to hear that, you're starting to move away from enlightenment, not toward it. Your basic nature is goodness. In fact, I'm just going to say to myself right now, John, your basic nature is goodness. That's baseline. That's baseline, folks, right there. Something that speaks against that, again, is not moving you toward enlightenment. This ignorance is at the root of all suffering. Can I get a witness? Somebody. This
Yeah.
ignorance of the basics, the basic true nature, right, is at the root of all suffering. And religion has helped that. I know I can get an amen from somebody with that. It's helped with that ignorance to make people believe or to think that you're separate so that you can pay their special toll to cross their bridge. That's not the way the nature of life is. That is not the Tao. In fact, the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. And so when people start naming it and calling it certain things, that's a red flag automatically. That's why I call it the eternal or the ineffable, the thing that is beyond our language, because it is the life force, and the natural state from a baseline is goodness. I'm not going to tell my kids that you are not good and you need a savior. I'm going to tell my kids from the very beginning, you are good, you are gracious, you are compassionate, you are kindness, you are greatness. Right now, already, you need nothing else except for to be aware of that. And don't ever forget that as a baseline. That's your basic goodness. Okay, that's my sermon for the day.
Father Thomas Keating, who was a Christian contemplative who basically brought forth the meditation called centering prayer. He made the statement that the only thing that separates us from God is the thought that we are separated from God. And Wayne Dyer says, change your thoughts, change your reality, right? Perceptions are the ultimate reality, not necessarily the ultimate truth. John, you know this as well as I do. So, these truths are eternal. We just have to connect with them. We have to walk in alignment with them and not be pulled aside by the noise, the cheerleaders, the crowds on the sideline, to distract us.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that one of the best ways to appreciate light is to have some darkness. And we've come through a dark phase. And I think now we really are realizing that there are some eternal truths that have been covered up by the varnish of really crummy theology. And we're relieving ourselves of that. We're letting go of that stuff. I think that's one of the reasons that we really are coming full circle, not just with Eastern thought, but these Eastern thoughts. It's funny. Somebody said something to me about not too long ago. They said, you know what I get from your Facebook page, and I was like, what is that? They said, well, I think you're just into Eastern religions. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, I really do have a deep appreciation for a lot of the philosophy of the East. But I said, now, what religion are you? And she said, I'm a Christian. And I said, well, where do you think Jesus came from? He came from the East too.
Hello.
I said, that's kind of an Eastern religion too. Now, I know it turned into European, and Jesus is supposed to be blonde hair, blue eyed, and British, right? But it came out of the East too. But my point is that one of the reasons we're coming back to this root, we're coming back to, we're just walking each other home to these kind of things, is because these are universal eternal truths that resurrect the soul, that liberate the being, that bring freedom to us. And I think it's fitting that we've experienced division, and I think it got us to separate from the noise just enough to go, wow, that's a whole lot of noise, so that we could then hear that still small voice that's always on the inside, that's inherent. It's a part of us. When we arouse bodhicitta, we commit to overcoming everything that obscures our innate wisdom and warm-heartedness. Everything that cuts us off from our natural ability to empathize with and benefit others. As bodhicitta arises, again, we return to that innate wisdom and warm-heartedness. One of the things I love about Pima is that, again, we go baseline here. Baseline, you are goodness. Baseline, you have innate wisdom in you that's automatic. It's a part of the flow of life because you're already connected to it. It's just a matter of being aware of it. It's not actually having to hook up to it. It's being aware of what already is. And then the warm-heartedness. I like how she says, when we commit ourselves and we arouse the bodhicitta, we automatically begin to get rid of the obscure things that have been overcoming us and allow that innate wisdom and that warm-heartedness to flow, because it is natural. It is just simply a part of you. Anybody have anything else you want to share? Because that really is, that's kind of the essence of chapter 1, honestly.
I love page 9, the second paragraph.
Got it. Okay. What is that?
Which it makes this statement. So when we arouse bodhicitta, it is important to understand that we're in it for the long haul. In other words, this is not a seasonal, or this is not a vacational path, right? This is something that we're in for the long haul. We will have to stick around for a long time and apply tremendous effort and patience. But the question is it worth it? Well, of course it's worth it, right? It's definitely worth it. The supreme vision of bodhicitta is to help every single living being awaken to their true nature, even those people that rub us the wrong way. And
especially,
the only way that we can awaken them is not by retaliation, an eye for eye and a tooth for tooth. The only way we can awaken them is to love them unconditionally, as Bishop John Shippey Spong says, love recklessly, right? Just give it all, just put it all out there, let them do whatever they will with it. But then she makes this statement, which I really love. Our only shot at accomplishing this is by first attaining enlightenment ourselves. And I think what has happened, John, is that a lot of times we have sincere people trying to give what they don't have. They try to give what they don't experience. They try to give what they aren't living. And so we will never step into the shoes of a bodhisattva until we actually, like the old colloquial expression, right? Until we actually practice what we preach. Until we practice what we preach. Yeah, I mean it's true, right?
Right.
And so
right.
It's easy to stand up and pontificate all of these, theological, philosophical, statements. But until we actually incarnate this practice, when we incarnate it with sincerity and purity, then we can give it. She continues by saying, along the way, we can take one step at a time, doing our best to keep our longing and commitment going during the ups and downs of our lives. And I believe that when we are sincere and we actually practice what we're preaching, and then we extend it to others, then we essentially become this family. We're tethered to one another, right? And so when I'm down, I have brothers and sisters who pick me up, and when they're down, I'm there to pick them up. And we're not only standing together, but we're wanting to stand together. We can stand together and still reject the person we're standing next to, right? You get in line. Well, I don't want to be in line with this person. Well, just because you stand together doesn't mean that you love the person you're standing next to. You have to want to stand together. And the path of the bodhicitta is the path of actually caring compassionately for that other human being. One of the most beautiful statements I believe that John Shippey Spong ever uttered was this. He said, whenever you devalue one person, you devalue all people, because everyone is created in the image and likeness of God.
Yes.
And so the path of the bodhisattva is to recognize that spark of divinity within every single person. And I would even say not only every single person, but those things that are animate and inanimate, the trees, the grass, the birds, the squirrels, the stars. It's recognizing the beauty of God everywhere and in everything. Okay, I'll get going.
Yes.
I'll shut up.
That's good stuff, brother.
Yeah. Well, you can love them, but you don't have to join them. You don't have to go to a Nazi rally to have empathy for people that think that way. So, I mean, I judge everything now since I got that piece. Oh, yeah, I judge. I'll admit it. I call it discernment. God gave me a mind to choose what people I want to hang with. And I choose to join One Love Spirit Center. So the words I hear from John resonate with me the most. So, and so
Well,
I look at others and what they're saying, what they're doing, and as long as I can get a sense that they're doing something on a moralistic value, such as peace, love, or joy, those are my 3 qualifications for anybody that I want to be around. And I can still love white supremacists. You know, I can still care about them, but I don't have to go to their rallies and hang out. You know, that's it. I have
so
my
as we
limits.
move, yeah, and you need to know your and you need to know your boundaries.
Yeah.
As
That's
we
my
move through
authentic
this,
self. Yeah. Go ahead, John.
and as we move through this book, we're going to really return to these principles more than once, and it is for the purpose of really of training. You can't train a skill without habit. There's practice that leads to habit leading to habitat, or how you build the life you live. So we will return to bodhicitta throughout this entire thing, because it is really about the open-heartedness and the ability to not just say it. And this is kind of what I was hearing, OB, when you were talking about enlightenment is not said, it is lived.
Yes.
It is lived. And when our essence exudes that, people can tell when they're around you, whether or not, because you are a radio station. You are playing the music of your inner being on your external self.
Watch
and
out.
when people are around you, they'll experience who you really are. And it's not about perfection either, folks. The bodhicitta is not about becoming perfect. We need to get rid of that idea that I need to become anything. In fact, if we're going to have an idea, let's become no thing rather than anything or anyone, and just simply be. And when you can do that, like when bodhicitta really starts to come from our core, and we've allowed it to be aroused and awakened within us, people will start to feel that in our presence. And if you're in the presence of a white supremacist, they'll feel it. You don't even have to correct their behavior. In fact, you lose the need to, because you get to the place where you don't judge anyone. Now, discernment is different, but you don't judge in the sense of sentencing them or bringing them before the court system of your own thinking, right? So you lose that kind of judgment, and yet you can remain in the sense of discernment. But you can even be in their presence and not even say a word. Well, D.L. Moody said it this way, and he was a preacher. Now, he was a preacher back in the day. He said, preach the gospel always, and when you need to, use words. So I would say practice bodhicitta always, and when you need to, use words.
Awesome.
Anybody else have anything? I know we're coming up on the end of this hour, and I want to make sure that we don't miss anyone that wanted to share something.
I just wanted to say to Shannon that when on the receiving end of customer service, when they give compassion, we really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I'm doing my best every day. But John, I wanted to say thank you for you, because I've been watching and listening to your meditation videos on YouTube. And I've actually been following you for I think it's been about 5 or 6 years now. We have the same background because we both come out of the Pentecostal church and whatnot. So I'm like, I can really relate to where you're coming from. So I just want to say thank you for what you're doing, because I do appreciate it. And I feel like I'm at that baseline right now of like, okay, I am good, like I'm a good person. And so I think I'm learning to love myself so that I can then love other people, because it's so much easier to love people when you love yourself. So that's where
All
I'm
I can
at.
say is when you get that peace I've got, you see the whole world in a different through this eye.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'll say this too, you know, back to the part that you read there, Obi, it was clear that she said our goal and if we have any work to do in this life, our work is to bring ourselves to enlightenment. It's not to try to enlighten the rest of the world. You know, one light bulb doesn't need to try to light up every other light bulb. Just be the light bulb you are. If it tries to do the other, it's going to electrocute somebody in the process. So I used to say this: grace is a lampshade. Because when you turn a lamp on without a shade, you blind. And then when you blind people, you could think that you're leading them to the light. But the reality is a light is intended to help to illuminate your path. You don't look directly at a light. You use a light to look. And so our enlightenment needs to happen here. Let's not be worried about trying to wake someone else up. Let's wake up here. As we wake up, we create ripples in the water. Of course we do. It's automatic. That's the way life flows. But if I'm working on arousing the bodhicitta inside of myself, that's all I need to do.
Hey,
And you don't have to preach or proclaim, you know, this season of enlightenment. You exude it.
Yes.
It's seen. You know, I love what Richard Rohr says. He says, the moment you've chosen to love, you've also chosen to die. The moment you've chosen to love, you've also chosen to die. So you don't have to write a dissertation or, you know, proclaim it from the pulpit. People see it. People sense. You know, they can tap into the energy, the flow, the momentum of a person. And so simply, for me, it's all about incarnating. You know, it's about taking what I know and allowing it to flow 18 inches down into my heart.
Yes. Agreed.
Yes.
That's lovely. You're all lovely. Patricia, Rachel, anything? Y'all good?
Good. I just want to say thank you. I didn't feel like I needed to share anything tonight because I felt like it was a moment for intake. I feel like I've learned so much and pulled in so much from the discussion tonight. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Awesome. And Rachel, we're with you as you're in this transition toward exciting new doors coming open for you. All right.
What's that all about?
Just believe with us. Believe with us for exciting new doors. Thanks.
Suspense.
All right, y'all. Well, if there's not anything else, I'm going to say this was a wonderful 60 minutes with all of you this evening. And we will get toward chapter 2 next week, titled, Does It Matter? Does it matter? And that's where we'll go next week. If you don't have a copy of the book, they are available wherever fine books are sold in different locations. And if you have a chance to take a look at it, or if you do the digital version also, I've got the place, you know, I love Kindle, like, and having the digital versions, but there's something about holding the book too. It has a certain smell. There's something about it. That's all I'm saying. But
yeah,
I love
smell, man. It's contagious.
Could I give Shannon a compliment right now?
Please.
Of course, it goes along with startling people. So I'm in a good mood. It's happened before at a restaurant or something. When we could go to restaurants, but I feel good at the moment. I give the waitress or the waiter, or even a customer service person, I said, thanks for doing the job you're doing, because if you weren't here, I could not do this. I would not be getting the service. And they look at me like, oh, I see the light bulb come on, and they're like, what planet are you from? You know, that look, you know, they're dumbfounded. They don't know what to say. And then they kind of get a smile on their face and they say, thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. So Shannon, keep up the good work.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You're all beautiful. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your energy with us this evening. And we will see you again next week.
Patricia's got something.
Oh, she's got one love.
Oh, did she do the whole one? Oh, yeah. The one love, one love. And I love you.
Peace.
Thank y'all so much.
Troy.
Have a wonderful evening.
God bless. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.